The story of King Kong has been passed down for decades, a lone giant ape living on a mysterious and forgotten island, faced with countless threats and the struggles that come with living on the planet's most deadly island. And as if this wasn't hard enough, a ship full of pesky humans shows up and attempts to take advantage of the island and its inhabitants for the simple goal of creating a movie to bring back to the civilized world and for them to make a hefty profit. King Kong becomes enthralled by the blonde beauty that is sacrificed to him, which eventually leads to him being captured, chained to the ship, and carried thousands of miles away from his home to be a slave. We all know how the story ends from there. The Toho and MonsterVerse versions of King Kong took slightly different approaches to this classic story, but the same general story was always there. And the story of King Kong is heartbreaking. In this video, we are going to go in depth on this iconic masterpiece and how sad it really is. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and go check out our merch line on Teesprings that you can wear proudly once you are able to go back outside again. Now back to the video, let's get to it. For at least the last few centuries, us humans have, for the most part, been born into a prospering and growing population that hasn't had to fear the thought of our kind dying out and becoming extinct. But imagine being Kong and being born into a dying species. Knowing that it's just you, your parents, and immediate siblings, as well as maybe some others of your kind spread few and far in between. That's all that's left. It's hard for us humans to ever imagine these days, but this is a reality that has happened endless times for so many species during the existence of life on Earth. Real-life animals likely do not know their fate in this situation, which may be even more sad than them knowing that they are at their species' end. King Kong, being a fictional monster with a high level of intelligence and social interaction, likely knew that the end was in sight and that he may be the last of his kind ever born. But even knowing this, Kong couldn't just give up. He had to fight.
From the moment Kong was born, he was pressed by the dangers of the natural world. As an infant, he would have made a quick and easy meal for any predators out there. And these predators would have wanted to kill the baby Kong before he was able to grow into a future threat to their own survival. Using their teeth, claws, and vast array of natural weaponry, Kong was lucky to have not been ripped apart in his early days. The dangers come straight at you. They snuck in the shadows, they came from above, from the water, and even the island itself was seemingly against the Kong's family's survival. Throughout the many different takes of the story of Kong and Skull Island, the island faces a troubling problem. An island has benefits when it comes to being separated from the mainland, but this seclusion also comes with the issues of disease, inbreeding, and lack of food. Something as simple as a cut could lead to an infection that couldn't be overcome. Having to breed with family members would have likely created problems, and over time, the food sources on the island may just disappear. Any sort of change could put the island into a drastic decline, and this is certainly an issue that King Kong had to face.
Earlier, we mentioned how humanity hasn't had to fear extinction for quite some time, but there are plenty of us who have to live a life seeing the ones we love and cherish die. Kong is the last of his kind, which means he saw his parents die, and any other family member or clan member for that matter. Even in the animal world, this is a hard pill to swallow, and there is evidence to support that some animals do indeed mourn the losses of the ones they spend their lives with. Kong may not have wished for his own death, but there may have been some thoughts on why he was the only one who just couldn't die.
Living in a world that always wants to kill you is hard enough, even when you have family and friends around you. But being alone makes it that much more difficult and terrifying, physically and mentally. Your species' enemies can sense that you are the last problem in their way, and they will hunt you, and it will never end. Kong would live on with injuries that he's been awarded for his endless survival of every encounter that he has, growing older and more tired after every battle. And during the few moments of peace that he had, the everlasting memory of his kind will haunt him. No matter how much he wanted them to come back or how much it hurt to be alone, he was destined to be alone until the day he died. This is rumored to be why Kong would reach out the way he did with Anne Darrow and the attractive females that were offered up to him. All he wanted was a companion and someone on the island that didn't want to hurt him.
If this story wasn't already upsetting enough, now place modern humanity into the fray. This part of Kong's story is the only part that we get to see in the movies. Giant creatures that you face head on is one thing, but these little humans could hurt him from a distance, and he was never able to understand the loud bursts of noise and the feeling of being stung dozens of times in an instant. He then falls emotionally for Andaro to the extent of his downfall. The little blonde human made Kong feel alive and allowed him to have more emotions than just fear, anger, and loneliness. This is why when Anne was taken from him that he pressed so hard for her return. His passion led him to let his guard down and be trapped. He was drugged against his will, chained, and forced on a steel ship that was completely foreign to him. His life was always hard, but for the first time ever, he was no longer free, and the weeks that he spent trapped in this hell were likely harder than any enemy he had ever faced. Real story or not, everyone just imagine that happening to you. We humans used to and still do this to each other in some places around the world. Once the hellish voyage was over, he was shipped all the way across the country to the city of New York, a concrete jungle. Cities can be overwhelming and scary to modern people in real life, so an animal who has spent his entire life as king on his island and surrounded by nature must have been losing his mind. All this for him to be used as a display for the enjoyment of the rich and fortunate. They didn't see his pain, and they certainly couldn't understand it, at least not until he couldn't take this punishment any longer. Kong manages to find the one being on Earth who had brought him comfort since his species passed, and then climbs the nearest thing to his mountain home. He was searching for something, anything to make him feel comfortable and at peace. For most of his life he wanted to not be alone anymore. But now all he wanted was to go back to his seclusion. His mind must have been racing so hard during his final moments.
Kong's story is one of great heartbreak and sorrow, but it's also one that can teach us a very important lesson. We may take for granted all that is good in our world, but it's always smart to understand that it all could just drift away right in front of us, and there may be nothing that we can do to stop it.
Hey residents, Jacob here. Making this video was really special to me. I've always loved the story of King Kong, but to look at it more deeply was both fascinating and truly a buzzkill of sorts. The natural world is hard enough, and seeing us humans make it worse, it just hits me pretty damn hard, guys. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you feel the same as me, share this video with all your friends and see how they think. Subscribe to the channel if you think I've earned it, and I'll see you next time, everyone. Peace out.